We're going to be casting yet another match at the X-Wing Central Texas Regionals Tournament. And hopefully the strange omen of technological failures that seem to be following me today will stay at bay so we can focus on this match here. So I was really excited to see a Decimator hit its way to the top table. It's got Rear Admiral Chinrao, leading the charge with Whisper in behind. And it looks like we've got a very conventional setup for Eric as far as how he's positioning his ships on the approach. Just in the sense that, I mean, they're both facing forward, which is something you don't typically see in high-level play, and you don't see that on Dennis's side. Dennis flying Sunterfell, Merrick Steele, and the Omicron group pilot. We actually just saw him play, and he did a terrific job, so we'll be seeing how he ekes out a second victory here on the top table, if at all possible. So I was talking with Evan between the matches, and while it's a very relatively simple relationship, it's definitely the one that you would have to see if you wanted to put Marek Steele on the table. Is just pairing him with Palpatine, as we were talking about how we hadn't seen Palp Defenders yet, which is the Palp shuttle, as well as the Countess. Come again? Okay. Well, the Countess and Vessery. Mark Steele, when it comes to one of the new Defender ships, is kind of one of the ones that got left on the wayside a bit. But if you pair him with Palpatine, he's got the ability to get those crits through, and maybe you'll see a little bit of that happening. He was able to activate it last time, though I believe Mark was one of the only ones to get knocked off the table. But that being said, on a list like this, defenders are still very much brawly and bruiser type ships, so it's not too terribly surprising that he was the one that had to go down. Now on the flip side, decimators are, I think, maybe a little bit more difficult to predict, just in terms of expectations of how they would navigate around some of the newer ships. It's definitely a symbol of an older meta. The main thing that it's got going for it here is its large health pool and the way that it gets to utilize Darth Vader in order to cause quite a lot of damage, especially to fragile ships, just by hurting itself. So we've got our first roll coming in. It's going to be Rear Admiral Chinro. And it looks like we've got a few successes. Coming on the defense, 5 dice. That's going to be Chinro against Sunterfell. 2 successes and a focus. And looks like Darth Vader is going to be pushing a crit through immediately. And it looks like because of the Cloak Whisper, it's not going to be able to shoot. More attacks coming in now. So it's like we're looking at a range 2 shot on the Decimator. Decimator is featuring no agility, so anything that comes through will go through. It looks like it's not going to be obstructed. Okay, so a hit and 2 focuses. And it looks like a focus got spent in order to turn that into 3 successes. And Palpatine to turn one of those successes into a crit. And Mark's choosing his crit. Unfortunately, we're not able to quite read the crit cards from way up here, but usually if you see a direct hit, that's the one that's going through. One thing that you really want to do when it comes to a Decimator that's running Vader is exhaust its health pool faster than it can exhaust its own health pool, just in the sense that eventually you want to stop triggering that Vader because you need to keep the Decimator on the field. One of the other big risks of bringing a Decimator, especially one that's dependent on self-inflicted damage, is bringing it up again. The way the tournament rules work is I mean, it's almost guaranteed that Dennis is walking away with at least half of the Decimator's health pool, just because that's kind of a condition that uh, is just going to be an inevitability for this Decimator, assuming that it's going to activate Vader even like 2 or 3 times. Looks like there's not going to be a shot between the Decimator and Palp Shuttle yet. One thing that's also worth remarking on in regards to the Palp Shuttle, it looks like it's the end of round, is that when you have it set up the way that we see it here, where it's just a collision detector just to allow it to maneuver a little bit more lazily, the Palp card and then the weakest pilot possible makes it very cost effective. And while it's not necessarily news as far as the strength of the Palp shuttle, it does make it a little bit less of a delicious target to go after compared to, say, the single ship Miranda that's 50 points, where it's like, oh, well, it's durable. It might not be the best first target for me, but like, it's hard to look down at those 50 points if you are able to take it off the board. It's interesting. It's always important to keep in mind what the implications are for the selection of Whisper versus Echo when it comes into a Phantom list. Because Echo is notorious for being one of the most maneuverable ships in the game. A lot of people jokingly going up against an Echo just say, hey, we'll just put your Echo wherever. Now, Whisper definitely enjoys the heavy hitting benefit that comes with a Phantom in exchange for that. But I would probably say that as far as the maneuvering abilities of Whisper versus Sunterfell are concerned, Sunterfell probably has the edge. When it would be Echo versus Sunterfell, that's definitely a lot more of a challenge, even though I believe Sunterfell still has the pilot skill advantage there. Whisper with VI, I believe is a 10, though I could be wrong. Either way, maneuvering games are definitely going to come into play, especially after the Decimator's taken off the board. When or if it happens. Looks like the last dial to go down is going to belong to the Decimator. And it's probably the most important maneuver for Eric, just given that Whisper more more likely is just going to be setting itself up. Intelligence Agent, just to show off the dial. This allows Eric to make more intelligence decisions using that engine upgrade. And it also allows for more intelligent decisions using the Whisper decloak, as you can see here, which is absolutely what Eric was looking for. So Omicron's moving in first. Looks like it's going to just bump up against Sunterfell. Actually, it might not. It might actually clear. Yeah, my view from up here is a little tilted, so I didn't see that quite straight down. So it looks like Palp Shuttle is moving up ahead. We did see in the last match the shuttle was putting out a punishing amount of damage, and it's important to remember that, you know, a Lambda's red dice are not any more special than an Interceptor's red dice. It's just a matter of how many dice your ship get, and whether or not your pilot skill or your slots enable you to take, you know, equipment to make those shots more likely to be successes. But hypothetically, if your dice are just behaving for you, that equipment usually doesn't do much extra for you unless it gives you the opportunity to, you know, take advantage of those dice. But the main point of, I guess, what I would say there is just that it's definitely something you don't want to shy away from, is using those front cannons. So it's like 1 damage coming through from streaking over that asteroid. But hypothetically, if this sets up a block, that could absolutely be worth it. Now, we already know this is probably not quite what the combat phase setup is going to look like, just given the maneuverability of the interceptor, but I would probably say with both of these lists, this is not exactly what I would say I would have expected to see. Just between a Phantom and an Interceptor, those are not ships that you normally do what this looks kind of like a joust with. Definitely not jousting vessels. Um, Now, Sunterfeld does have auto thrusters, and so it's going to be pretty key for him to stay out of the forward firing arc of the Decimator. He's still going to be taking shots, but, you know, Sunterfeld with tokens, auto thrusters, and a Palpatine behind him make him pretty much invincible. At least against, a single shot. I think if I were Eric, my goal would be to take all of the support out from underneath Sunterfeld before going after him in this sort of situation. Just because between the Decimator and the Phantom, I wouldn't expect them both to be able to very often stack damage on him at the same time. And they got, hypothetically, more important things to worry about. When, in this case, obviously they'll both be firing at Palpatine when they can. Yeah, that's got to be a discouraging sight. Now, that being said, it looks like no successes went through, but an evade token's being spent in order to clear out that damage. And it looks like Vader is going to throw through a blinded pilot anyway. And that actually takes Sanctum off the board. Which also just makes the last thing I said completely wrong. Not factoring in for the Vader at all in what I was just figuring. And to be entirely honest, that puts things in a pretty serious advantage for Eric here. Especially when right off the back of that, Whisper comes through and deals pretty mean punch to the Lambda, not wasting any time, already getting started on the next kill within the same round. So now Dennis is in a precarious position because Sunterfeld was his frontliner. Now Marek Steel with Palpatine getting the ability to throw crits through might be able to deal a surprisingly, devastating amount of damage through direct hits and things like that, but it's definitely not good to lose the Sunterfeld in a joust when really what his value is his long tail. So I already see one evade there. And it looks like that's probably all he was going to need with no focus token. And now we got Palpatine firing on the Rear Admiral. And it looks like 3 successes to me. Rerolling. Now it's 3 successes. Looks like and that's an additional 2 crits. Looks like Dennis is probably fishing for some direct hits. Hopefully to take that Decimator off the board in order to even things out. It is definitely going to be what I would consider a matter of time. Both of those cards had way too much text on them to be direct hits. And it looks like because of Rebel Captive, the Lambda ship is getting a stress token, and a stress token from one of the crits is on the Decimator. To be entirely honest, I think Dennis might have played into Eric's hands as far as jousting is concerned. There's definitely a temptation to do so with Merrick, but Merrick was really set up to block there. And I think the main reason why Sunterfeld went down there is because he was just barely in that front arc. You could see them measuring it pretty closely earlier. But now dials are going down, and we're going to see what can be made of it. And fortunately, we have a pretty strong display of the damage cards accumulating on the Decimator there. Decimator, I believe, has a grand total of 16 health. I'm not sure how much of that is shields, if any. I believe none, if I'm correct. So we'll have a pretty good idea of how much longer it's going to be on the table. Can't imagine for too long. Actually, is it 8 and 8? That can't be possible because otherwise it'd be off the board already. We'll see. To be entirely honest, at this rate, though, it's definitely going to slow down once the Decimator gets taken out. It's looking like a pretty quick win for Eric. There's still 56 minutes left in the round. Dial's going down. And it looks like things are going to get moving soon. They're doing some intelligence agent checking, just getting an idea of where Merrick's going to go. Looks like he probably wanted to get the Lambda, but couldn't. And it looks like Merrick's just going to be banking, if I can see that dial properly. The current situation with the ships definitely is modeled around the way these asteroids were placed. And I wasn't paying attention at the time that they were going down, so I don't know who placed what. But it definitely, especially with a hindsight perspective, makes this sort of joust on the side here seem pretty likely. Especially when you remember the setup positions of both Whisper and Oiken. Not Oiken, the Rear Admiral. Sorry, whenever I see a Decimator, I assume it's Oiken. All Whisper's really done is just flown forward. And the Decimator made a very, very slight bank. And that was about the end of it. If I were to hazard another prediction for where this game is going to go, I feel as though it's going to be a matter of Dennis trying to chase down the Whisper. And I'm not sure if I would say that either Mark or a Lambda Shuttle would be good candidates in order to do that. Alright, Decimators have 12 hull and 4 shields. Thank you, chat. Which means that the Decimator is very close to death, as relative to a Decimator. Looks like they're trying to decide if the Decimator bumped. They seem pretty sure, or at least sure enough to try it. It doesn't look like it's lining up, though, even from here. So it's just going to be a scoot forward. Alright, and it looks like we're moving into the combat round. So I heard a range 2 shot being called for the Rear Admiral to Merrick, and it's 2 successes. And it looks like it's no successes to me. There's that one glared dice that might be an evade. It's regrettable, but at this point, if Merrick's taking shots, Dennis is going to have to start spending that Palpatine in order to keep him alive in every situation that calls for it. Because the Lambda is not about to take out, like, Whisper one-on-one. We're seeing a return fire here. So it looks like he was able to, between maybe a focus result, resolve things out. And we're looking at least 2 successes. Actually, we're looking at just the 2 successes. I can see the 1 blank die in the second view of the cup. One of which is a crit, so Merrick's going to take his pick. And it looks like he just picked out a direct hit just based on how fast it was. And that is the decimator off the board. So 100% the value of Palpatine coming through. Even though Palpatine did not convert that die, just the assurance that if you bring, Palpatine along, that you have the confidence to field Merrick as well. And so now we are in that situation. And we're going to be moving back to dials here. So buckle up, because this is going to be a procedure, a slow process. If I were Dennis, I would probably pull the Palp Shuttle out of this fight and have it just be a matter of having Merrick try his best, see if he can't chase down the Whisper, and all he's got to do is push through one good attack, choose a crit, and make it a direct hit, and he's going to take this game. It assumes the Palp Shuttle survives, and it assumes that Merrick can actually get a shot down on that Whisper. Now that being said, on Eric's side, if that target lock's indicative of anything, Whispers are going to be trying to chase down that Lambda Shuttle. You see here that we're just moving out. Definitely out of range. They're just going to focus up, just in case. Really, it's more just that typically don't skip on your action even if you have no reason to take one. Looks like Whisper's not deciding to decloak just yet. And that recon specialist definitely going to be doing a lot of benefit for Whisper now that she's by herself. Just having 1 for defense and 1 for offense, or 2 for defense if you really need it, in the event that you're taking 2 shots. And it looks like Dennis might just want to clear the stress off of Merrick before he tries and chases down a Phantom, which is a very sensible decision. So we've got 49 more minutes to see how this one plays out, and this is really going to break down into more of a standard Empire versus Empire game from what I've personally experienced. Now we've taken the Decimator out of the board. Back to the good old safe ships that we all know and love and understand. Definitely smart for Eric to keep that cloak on, just in case he takes a surprise long-range shot, and really just because he doesn't need that extra maneuverability boost just yet from the decloak, and he probably is just going to save it up until it's time for him to attack. Of course, that being said, it looks like he's doing a decloak now. And it looks like Whisper's going to be temporarily out of view. This camera's got the bottom edge of the mat, but not quite the top edge. Looks like about a ship's width. But it'll be back in soon. Really, the main thing that's happening is that every prediction I make of Eric's is shown to be wrong about immediately after I make it. So it clears the stress. Better hope there's a barrel roll there for obvious reasons. And there it is. Yeah, The pause gave me just enough time to be concerned. So it looks like both players are kind of doing the most sensible thing here. No surprises. That Eric's kind of making a little bit of space for himself, trying to make for a good approach. Dennis is regrouping both of his ships so they can cover for each other. Um, both of them are very well aware that if the other player gets their ideal conditions, that they are very likely to pull out the victory here. What Eric wants is to catch one of those two ships unawares or unprotected by the other, and what Dennis wants is to have a situation where Merrick is given just the ideal situation to put as strong of an attack, just one decisive blow on that Whisper. It is also worth noting that I am very certain that Dennis has the point advantage currently, which, I mean, realistically, he's not about to wear down a 45-minute clock, but the ball is currently in his court. Actually, that's not how the phrase works. The ball is in Eric's court. Eric needs to do something. As far as this phase of the game is concerned, not having that Decimator is going to be more devastating for Eric, not necessarily because of the inability to continue to dump Vader crits on people, but because he no longer has the ability to use the intelligence agent in order to make more intelligent decisions regarding decloaking, which is something that is going to require Eric just to be a little bit better of a pilot and outmaneuver Dennis. Looks like we might get some manner of a range 3 shot here. He's scooting himself back to make sure that he's the only one that gets it. And certainly every poke is a risk that Eric shouldn't really be interested in taking. And looks like, yep, he managed to barrel roll himself out of arc. He almost certainly has an arc on himself. Looks like it's a range 2 shot, actually. This could be really significant for Eric. Let's get that camera up. Let's see these dice. That's going to be 2 hits and a focus. And that focus is going to get turned into a crit by Palpatine. Now we got a focus token. And that's 2 evades. That means the crit's going through. Now it's only going on the shields. But that sort of whittling is for free. Absolutely a significant victory for Dennis. You know, it's easy to say, oh, that was just one shield. But all Eric needs is to get that one crit through, draw a direct hit, and it is over. And so getting those shields out of the way is the key to do it. This is specifically what you would probably consider that noose tightening, where Eric just has less room to make mistakes and has to really pull something into his court really fast. So, yes, he lost one shield, but at this point in the game, these margins are getting very, very thin. It's perhaps worse for Eric that he's not even cloaked, so he can't decloak around that asteroid, which means that his next few maneuvers, at least like the options that he has for his maneuvers here, very narrow. Normally, you might even consider flying right over the asteroid as a bold move, but you have to ask yourself if that's really worth the risk currently. And I doubt that Eric's going to cloak on this round, so defensively he's pretty exposed. Now, he does have pilot skill advantage. In the event that he has matching arcs with Merrick's steel, depending on the situation that Merrick's ship is in, he may just completely eliminate Merrick and not have to worry about that return fire. Though at this point, Dennis is almost certainly going to start using the Lambda to cover his own ship with that Lambda's arc in order to provide, while probably less threatening, still present covering fire, which at least represents an ongoing threat to the Whisper. So all dials are down. Let's see what happens. Yeah, bank for the Lambda. Exactly as predicted. And acquiring a target lock. Am I wrong here? Does Merrick actually have a pilot skill advantage? Merrick also has veteran instincts. Actually, yeah, they're either matching and Dennis has initiative, or Eric has initiative, or Merrick has the advantage. It does also look like he did swoop over that asteroid in order to bump with the Lambda and avoid a shot by Merrick. And fortunately got away with nothing from what I saw at a glance. And it looks like Merrick might be assigning a target lock of his own. So this was definitely a good move for Eric. I don't even think that he would have wanted to have a shot on the Lambda in this situation. No, he might have. It might have been worth the risk, especially given the same situation where if you blow it out of the sky, it doesn't get to shoot back at you, unless you're matching pilot skills. And so we're seeing dials go down again. That one was a pretty fast one, so everyone knew exactly what they wanted to do. It looks like the Lambda might not be moving very far. It can clear the Whisper, but it can't clear Merrick. So they're just going to leave it sitting there. Whisper, I assume, is going to make a K-turn. This is actually very beneficial for Eric. That Lambda is suddenly exposed. It's not going anywhere. It didn't get any actions. Does not have a shot. It looks like Merrick's positioning ended up not making enough space for that Lambda shuttle. And it looks like Merrick might have run over an asteroid. If so, we'll see a dice get rolled. Yeah, it looks like he K-turned onto an asteroid as well, and that looks like a hit. So Merrick is going to take another hit to his shield. So this is a oh, and he's palpatining. He palpatined the rock in order to turn it into a blink. Range 1 shot coming in from the Whisper. Oh, and get that camera up. The Palpatine's already been used. Looks like we've just got 2 successes coming through, one of which is a crit. Oh, and rerolled 3 of his dice, and got 2 more hits there. So we've got 4 successes, 1 evade, 3 damage going through. I don't know what the exact situation on the Lambda shuttle is. We got 1 crit coming through. And it looks like we're going to move back to dials on that one. That was a fantastic turnaround for Eric. And now he didn't take anything off the board, but he got what he wanted, and now Dennis is in a pretty good position to recover from this. It looks like he's going to be able to move the Merrick forward in order to take another shot at Whisper. Whisper, on the flip side, is going to have to make the decision about whether or not she's willing to take that risk in order to continue chasing the Lambda from behind. Whisper, having a stress, also has to, hypothetically, wants to clear it now. She can risk carrying it into the next round if she really wants to, but that would mean no focus action. It would mean having to clear it probably the round after if he doesn't do it now. But this seems like an ideal situation for the Lambda to maybe pull a stop maneuver and try to complicate things for the Whisper further, given the current situation. I've got to say, even though this has been a lot of maneuvering games, it's actually been very carefully and high stakes execution. I'm not entirely sure whether or not Dennis knew he was going over the rock and planned to use Palpatine for it, but it's definitely fortunate that he had that available. So we got 3 dials down, and we're going to start with seeing what the Lambda does. Looks like that might actually be the stop maneuver. Yeah, yep, not going anywhere. Alright, well, Whisper cleared the stress, currently in arc, and is going to cloak up. That's going to give Whisper a couple extra evade dice, but this is Dennis's chance to defy the green dice, which are, you know, stereotypically more than happy to stop themselves. So Whisper's not going to be taking any shots at anybody this round. Looks like a range 2 shot coming in from Merritt. Let's get that camera up. Looks like definitely going to spend a focus. Probably also going to Palpatine. Then we'd be looking at a hit and 2 crits. And there's the focus. And there's the Palpatine. So that's 3 successes coming through. Let's see what those green dice can do. That's 3 evades, 3 natural evades. So that's 1 out of 2. That was the big one. And now they got to decide whether or not the Whisper's actually an arc. It definitely looked like it from here. They're trying to decide. If it is, it's by a hair. It looks like they ultimately decided it wasn't, so that actually worked out much better for Eric than it looked like it would have from here. That being said, Eric's still in this position where he's cloaked. He's going to have to decloak if he wants to start shooting, and he needs to figure out what he wants to do with that decloak in order to give him a positional advantage. We are down to 33 minutes and 33 seconds remaining on the clock. It's probably safe to assume that this maneuvering game is eventually going to end in at least 1 or potentially 2 ships being destroyed. And at this point, we know that everything has taken some damage. Actually, Merrick might not have. I'm fairly sure he had earlier, though. Looking over, I don't see any damage cards on him, so he might actually not have taken any damage yet. So dials are down. Looks like there might be a minor adjustment before we get started here. We'll know for sure when it starts with the decloak, assuming that that's what's going to get used first. At this point, the resources that are at play here are pretty well understood. There's not a lot of really significant tricks to utilize. Merrick and the Palp Shuttle are all of their manipulations are based on the combat phase. And what Eric's got available to him are those decloak maneuvers, but other than that, he's got some defensive options, especially with the advanced cloaking device, but the maneuvering is, for the most part, just down to the dials. And I would say that it's fairly easy to argue that this is really when you see the majority of the player skill kind of come to bear. Because, I mean, you don't tend to have very skillful dice rollers. Looks like we're seeing a crit result come through as a product of making some decision. Whisper moving forward. Looks like Dennis saw it coming. And, yep, Whisper has no shot from what it sounds like on the table. I will say I've been noticing a trend that Dennis is definitely one of those players that is comfortable with making maneuvers that are self-destructive because he judges that the value of that maneuver is worth more than the risk of a damage. Looks like Dennis had a very strong idea of exactly where he expected that Whisper to end up. He's going to try for a barrel roll, but it seems pretty ambitious. That being said, if it does land, he's going to have a fantastic shot on that Whisper. Looks like they ultimately decided that wasn't going to be possible. So, finally concluding, Whisper does not have a shot. Now, there's definitely one coming from that Lambda, though. Odds are Merrick doesn't have one either. Yep. So let's see some cow damage. Keeping in mind that looks like Whisper is cloaked. And all of those dice are full of glare. I think I see maybe a couple focus results. And it's being a target lock, so maybe not. Oh. That's rude. Turning one of those into a crit, because might as well. So you got a crit and hit. And 3 focus results. That's the game. The green dice weren't ready. That was a fantastic series of maneuvers. And it's not every day that you get to see a Lambda shoot down a Phantom. That's always fun. So Dennis continuing to display a pretty strong lead with his list here. I think a lot of people are going to be very happy to see Merrick Steele doing so well as he is here. You know, like I was saying earlier, a lot of people have kind of written him off for the Countess and for Vessery, but he's proving that as a defender, he is very much a competent and capable contributor as well. That being said, Eric's list definitely also very happy to see it. I love seeing decimators on the table. They're a unique ship that don't get quite as much love as I think they deserve. But that being said, I think that the hazard that comes from effectively giving away points with a self-destructive ship kind of gave Eric a bit of a disadvantage there.